Actually, this is kind of a general thing, but there were several different people that asked a very similar question, which was like Fall Down Go Boom asked something like this. Tron asked something like this. There's several others basically saying, what were the inspirations of State of Decay? Like, what was the media that and it's every stage along the way. The inception of State of Decay, Brant, would really, I think folks want to know where the idea of this world came from initially, but also Andy, like what media did you consume and sort of feel like inspired the work that you did on this game? Starting with Brant
So
though.
yeah, I mean, the original idea of trying to come up with a game like this was born out of Trevor Howell, Doug Williams, and I. Trevor Howell works at a different company. We all worked at Arena at the time. We sat around drinking beer, and we'd watch zombie movies because we loved them. The Romero or some of the Italian ones, whatever ones we could get our hands on, really. And and the inspiration was we loved zombie movies. It didn't matter what they were. Um, uh, we started, since we all worked at game companies, we all started talking about, at the end, when we'd finish the movie, we'd talk over what we would have done differently given the situations that were presented in the movie. And we thought, that seems like a good place to like build a game around. And another one of the really important early inspirations was the approach that the comic book for Walking Dead took. Um, I actually never watched anything past the first season because they sort of moved away from the comic book quite a bit. But I loved how they had the same sort of attitude about using what you have and fighting your way through it and trying the whole time to create community. There's so many other inspirations and things that we've paid homage to and things like that. I mean, games, movies, television, comics. You could run through the list, and there's something in State of Decay that might just be a nod to that. But a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff.
Andy?
Obviously all the usual suspects apply here, right? Like you can't work on a game like this and not immerse yourself at some level on zombie and post-apocalyptic fiction. And certainly in those early years in the studio, I was reading and watching a lot of it. Trying to remember what was I reading 10 years ago when I joined the studio. Shauna McGuire's Feed series is an unorthodox post-apocalyptic zombie series. It's a little bit further on into the apocalypse as opposed to immediate aftermath of. I remember really liking those. Blanking on what else I was reading. Certainly Zombieland was great for tone when we were writing a lot of our dialogue in those early
World War Z
days.
book
World War Z, yeah. World War
that
Z
book
book was a big deal.
was fantastic. And then, I'm sorry to interrupt, Andy, but another important person who was actually tied to our project for a little while wrote the book Day by Day Armageddon, J. L. Bourne. That first book is actually was actually a very good inspiration. Even though we had already started production, there was a lot of things that he focused on with that character that eventually sort of added some seasoning to our tone.
A book that Geoffrey pointed me to, Alan Weissman's The World Without Us, is literally still is sitting right on my desk here. It's a fascinating. I think you pointed this to me,
I
Geoffrey.
think
Maybe
it
it
was
was somebody
somebody
else.
else. I think somebody
Okay.
pointed both of us to
Anyway,
it.
this is a book that was written many years ago by a guy who just basically took the thought experiment of what is the world going to look like after we start keeping up with maintenance and things like that. How quickly do buildings fall apart? How quickly do power grids go offline? Warning, it's a little scary to read and think about. But in addition to sort of genre and topic specific stuff, ultimately we were writing stories about human beings. So those stories need to be universal. They can't be just this is only a story that would happen after an apocalypse. These are only characters who would exist after an apocalypse. So like when I was working with my writing team to craft the dialogue for our various voices, Uh, I took inspirations from all sorts of places. Like some of the characters are like, oh, this person's voice is a little bit like Hurley from Lost, and this person is a little bit like CJ Craig from West Wing, and it's you find inspiration everywhere when you're looking for character voices or stories to tell, and you don't want to limit yourself just to one genre.
Was that Brock and Diana, by the way, in order? I'm trying to
Uh,
say.
the Hurley voice ended up turning into the voice that Larice uses, and that it was just sort of this bubbly positive. Like what I wanted out of that character was, this is a character who looks on the bright side of things, who doesn't get too down into it. So like we weren't ever trying to just mimic a character voice. It was usually like blend these three together into aspects of this. Kara Thrace and what's her name from Community. Like take those two characters, mash them together, and give me a voice that sort of feels like that. That's a starting point, and then you evolve as you write.
And then the voice becomes
hundreds
itself,
and thousands. Right.
Totally. As far as like the books that I was reading at the same time,
Britta from Community.
Britta,
Sorry,
thank you. Yeah. The Knowledge by Lewis Dartnell was a really it's similar to the book The World Without Us. The Knowledge is about the development of like how we could recreate technologies that were lost, because we've got huge industries built up around providing like essential things to us that in your backyard you couldn't do it the same way that the industry does. And it's about the book is about how we could relearn how to do things people used to know how to do that now we don't know how to make charcoal anymore.
Right. We'll never, after the apocalypse, you'll never see a wooden pencil again. Because the amount of technology required to bring all those components together and make a simple wooden pencil will be so far beyond us, it's not even funny.
Yeah, and then as far as zombie media goes, like I think the one thing that I wanted to make sure we called out was The Girl with All the Gifts is actually is probably my favorite zombie story of all time, partly because it is a story about, it's not about defeating the plague. And I don't want to get into spoilers or anything like that, but it's fascinating the way that their solution to the future of the world, it's much more about living with the new world rather than defeating the new world. And I think that was highly inspirational with sort of just the attitude and the approach that we've taken with the way we've told these stories.